Hello. Today's Moravian reflection is Revelation 17, verses 1 to 8, which of course is one of the easiest passages to reflect on. I want to give you some context. The author is widely regarded as being John the Apostle, son of Zebedee, as in Matthew 10:2. It was written around AD 95, at least the latter part of that century, when Christians were being persecuted and had been for probably some decades actually. Roman emperor worship was being enforced, and Christians naturally would not comply. So it appears that John had been exiled to the island of Patmos, which was probably being used as a Roman penal colony for his resistance to the Roman culture. The book of Revelation is highly symbolic, hard to understand, and rarely heard in a preach as a result. But I want to be clear today, so I will outline the content, my interpretation, what the passage teaches us today, and finally some prophetic thoughts. So firstly, the content. John is on a tour of heaven, guided by angels, and the one who starts in the Revelation 17 verse 1 had 7 bowls of God's wrath, and this angel invites John to preview the punishment which would be meted out. Now this is pretty serious stuff, because in the passage the great prostitute features large. Now scripture uses the word prostitute in different ways. Sometimes it refers to prostitutes, sometimes it refers to God's faithless people, sometimes it refers to evil, unrighteous forces and world powers, which is probably the context actually in this setting. The beast is destined for destruction, presumably Satan. He is described at the end of this passage as once was, in other words, he's over. Now is, in other words, his day hasn't come yet, but not yet to come. His final day is fixed, but the court of heaven is yet to happen. The woman in the passage is the human beast worshipper. And the astonished in verse 8, which is probably the most staggering part of this passage, are the unsaved earth's inhabitants, many, many, many of them, who will be staggered when they learn whom they have followed, in other words, Satan. So my interpretation of this passage: the prostitute represents evil, unrighteous forces and world powers. The woman on the beast is central, and she has the blood of the saints on her lips and represents all those who persecuted believers throughout time, deceived by Satan. Just as important, she represents the earth's cultural norm. The meaning of this is that swathes of mankind have based their lives on lies and deception and continue to do so. It's a tremendously tragic thing to acknowledge. So we've looked at the context, the content, my interpretation. I want to look at what this passage teaches us today as we look at our present culture. Well, firstly, our culture is largely God-blind. That's what this teaches us. We have to reverse this where we can as believers. Secondly, evil rulers are hated by God in their oppression of people groups, financial corruption and self-centered aggrandizement, which we've seen so many times, particularly in recent times. We need to, as believers, align our views with heaven. Note, this is not a political statement. Please don't make it political. It's a moral and ethical statement. We need to support those who are oppressed, whatever we believe about politics. Thirdly, Satan is finished. but will have his humiliation in the court of heaven watched by all the believers. Be reassured. Fourthly, the unsaved will be astonished at how they were deceived. Let's therefore do our utmost to lovingly draw them into truth and refuse to be drawn into cultural values which we know are wrong. Beware, this will make us unpopular. And fifthly, we need to speak truth and pray earnestly for heart, soul and spirit penetration. We often hear of weapons that will penetrate 10 meters of concrete or some tanks or whatever. Prayer will penetrate all the difficult things that are put up to stop us reaching people. Heart, soul and spirit penetration can occur through prayer. So let me finalise with some prophetic thoughts. You may feel overwhelmed in life, and you may feel some areas of life defeat you, but let me just reassure you, the opposite to the prostitute is the bride, and you are the bride. Even though you're not perfect, you are the bride. I'm 66 now, and I've seen lots of marriages, and I can tell you one thing. What brides ask for is usually given. So I'd encourage you to pray. Pray for those you know. Pray for those that are deceived. Pray for rulers that are unrighteous. Pray for all those things that we've referred to in this reflection today. God is on our side, and we just need to pray to have his power enter people's lives. Have a great day.